Okay, let's get right into it. We are absolutely swimming in visual information, charts, graphs, you name it. And they're supposed to make things simpler, right? But what if I told you that sometimes the clearest looking chart is actually the one that's designed to fool you? Today, we're going to break down one of the oldest and most effective tricks in the book for how a simple chart can mess with your brain.
All right, take a quick glance at this chart. It's showing the top tax rate now compared to a future date. Don't even read the numbers yet. Just look at the bars. What's your gut reaction? How big does that increase feel?
Yeah, it looks like a huge change, doesn't it? I mean, that second bar is just towering over the first one. It looks like it's, what, 4, maybe 5 times bigger? It just feels like this massive, dramatic leap. But is it really?
So, that feeling you just had, that immediate sense of, whoa, that's a huge jump, that was completely intentional. It's not an accident. It's a really powerful design trick, and it has a name. So let's pull back the curtain and see exactly how it works.
It's called y-axis truncation. Now that sounds kind of technical, but it's super simple. All it means is that instead of starting the vertical measurement at 0, the creator of the graph starts it at some higher number. You know, like in that tax chart we just saw, the axis didn't start at 0, it started way up at 34.
And the result is simple, but in a sneaky way, brilliant. It takes what might be a pretty small or modest difference and visually just blows it completely out of proportion.
And this right here, this is the aha moment. We are looking at the exact same data in both of these charts, same numbers, but look at the difference. On the left, when you start at 0 where you're supposed to, you see a pretty normal, steady increase. Nothing too crazy. But on the right, where the axis is truncated, whoa, it looks explosive. It's the same data telling 2 completely different visual stories.
So why is this so darn effective? Well, it's basically a hack that exploits how our brains are wired. See, when you glance at a bar chart, your brain doesn't bother with the tiny numbers on the side at first. That's slow work. It does something much, much faster. It just compares the size of the shapes. It's a mental shortcut. And this all happens in a split second, long before the logical number crunching part of your brain even wakes up.
Okay, so we know how it works, but just how powerful is this illusion, really? I mean, does it fall apart if you just look a little closer? Well, a group of researchers wanted to find out, so they put it to the test.
Yup, researchers over at Duke University designed 5 different studies just to measure what they called the truncation effect. They wanted to know just how much these kinds of charts can actually mislead us.
And the results, honestly, they're pretty staggering. Across all 5 of those studies, get this, a massive 83.5% of people were influenced by the tricky graphs. They consistently judged the differences to be way bigger than they actually were.
Okay, but you're probably thinking, that's for people who are caught off guard, right? What happens if you warn someone ahead of time? What if you tell them, hey, watch out for this trick? Surely the effect just goes away then.
You would absolutely think so. But this is where the research gets really interesting. Because what the scientists found was that even when they told people exactly what was going on, the warning wasn't enough to completely stop the illusion.
So let's look at their data. On the left here, this is the group that got no warning. See that big gap? That's the difference between their ratings for the honest charts and the tricky, truncated ones. They totally fell for it. That's the illusion working at full strength.
Okay, now look over at the group that was warned. The gap is definitely smaller, right? So the warning helped, for sure. But look closely. It didn't disappear. It's still there. Even when their logical brains knew they were being tricked, their eyes were still screaming. That's a huge difference. They just couldn't fully shake that initial visual impression.
All right, so if even a direct warning can't completely kill this illusion, maybe it comes down to expertise. I mean, surely someone who works with charts and numbers all day, like a statistician, would be totally immune to this, right?
Well, the researchers decided to put that idea to the ultimate test. They brought in 2 different groups of PhD students. On one side, students from fields that are all about numbers, statistics, economics, that kind of thing. On the other side, students from the humanities, history, English. Now, you would absolutely bet that the stats experts would see right through this trick.
And the results are just wild. Both groups fell for it. And not just that, they fell for it in almost the exact same numbers. 75% of the math and stats PhD students were still fooled by the chart. 78% of the humanities students. They were basically identical.
It just goes to show you how deep-seated this visual bias really is.
And that brings us to the most important takeaway here. This has nothing to do with being smart. It's not about being good or bad at math. This is a fundamental feature of how the human brain processes visual information. It affects everyone. So the only real defense isn't to be smarter. It's simply to be aware that this trick exists.
Okay, so how do you actually do that? How do you build that awareness so you can spot this stuff in the wild when you're just, scrolling through your feed or reading an article?
Well, it's actually a really simple little checklist you can run in your head. First, and this is the big one, just force your eyes to look at the vertical axis. Does it start at 0? Second, look for that disconnect. Do the bars look dramatically different, but when you check the actual numbers, the change is pretty small? And third, just be a little suspicious if the scale, the numbers on the axis, are really tiny or faded or hard to read. That can sometimes be a sign someone doesn't really want you paying attention to them. Because in the end, it all boils down to this one really crucial idea. Just because a chart looks clean and professional, that doesn't mean it's being honest. Visual clarity does not guarantee visual honesty. Taking that extra half second to just check the axes, that's your superpower. That's how you make sure you're seeing the real story, not just the one someone wants you to see.